welcome to Jacob's Quest, and today I just finished watching Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I was about to say Episode 3, Volume 3, sorry. Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And yeah, long awaited from James Gunn. It's been something that I think originally, in the universe where James Gunn was never fired, this would have come out like 3 or 4 years ago, I think, you know, or a while ago. And yeah, this movie, I'll say just up front, I really did enjoy this movie. I'll say that up front. I do have some thoughts. So first off, this movie had to, oh, by the way, full spoilers. I'm just gonna go right into it. Here we go. This movie had a lot of stuff that it had to juggle walking into it. And I do feel like they managed to, you know, tie everything in together as well as they could. I think there are still definitely some weaker spots where it's like, did this need to be in the movie at all even? Like, I understand that you're kind of following up on something you teased in the last movie, but it just seems kind of random. It feels like you could easily just kind of dissect that out, you know. We'll talk about dissection stuff later. Anyways, but overall, I do feel like we got a pretty complete package here. It is 2.5 hours. I think at times I was starting to feel its length, but at the same time, like I said, they have so much to pack into one movie that it's like, I guess they needed that time, you know. And even though there are moments where they're joking around maybe a little too long, or they're having moments where it's like, you could cut this small scene out, it's not even plot relevant, I do feel like if they cut out the small moments, then it would really just feel like we're just rushing along from plot point to plot point. So, you know, like they had to keep in the slower beats where it feels like it's just the characters, you know, being themselves, but they also had to fit in so many different threads from other things that they managed to do it. It feels a little long, but they did do it, you know, and I did enjoy it. So all right, let's just dive right into it. So second thing I feel like I need to put out there right away, before I watched this, I think it was Dan Murrell's review, he was talking about how there was certain things that's gonna make probably a lot of people uncomfortable in this movie. There's animal cruelty, a lot of animal cruelty. They're CGI animals, they're not real animals, but still they look pretty, you know, obviously it's all realistic CGI, you know, so they don't look like cartoon characters. It's like, and there's animal cruelty, there's you know, animal experimentation, there's body manipulation, a lot of it horrifically so, like just like design wise, looking at the way that some of these animals have been experimented on was like visibly uncomfortable, because it was like, Jesus, you know, like it was grotesque to look at. And I think it was like the reason why they showed all this was so you know how much of a real bastard the High Evolutionary is, you know, how evil this guy is, right? Like that he would do this to animals. But it was like sitting there in the theater, and then like you see what he did to this rabbit over here, or what he did to this walrus over here, and you're like, oh my god, you know. And the animals, you know, this kind of makes it worse. The animals are sitting there with like really cute cartoony voices coming out, and they're just like being friends with each other, and you know what's about to happen. You know that Rocket escapes, because this is all a flashback. You know Rocket escapes from this place, and we've never seen any of these friends or heard them mentioned after this. So, you know, you're watching all this unfold, and they're all playing and having fun, and you're like, oh my god, none of them are making it out of this. And sure enough, yeah, they you know, not only did we have to see the aftermath of the horrible experiments done on animals, you know, again, CGI animals, but still, but then they die, and it's like, you know. So I gotta say right now, a lot of people, you know, they go into movies, they can handle all the John Wick style action in the world, but the second the dog dies, the second the animal gets hurt in a movie, a lot of people check out immediately. You know what I mean? And this movie does not hold back on that, which, you know, this is a Disney MCU movie, so it's kind of shocking at times how much this movie really pushes it. And I know a lot of people have brought up like, oh, they say the F word. I'm like, this movie does a lot more than that. Like they're showing disturbing imagery, not just like, oh, blood and guts and stuff, but like the body horror, the body deformations and the robot parts sticking out of where, you know, it's a lot, you know. So like, obviously, you know, like, none of this is real, no actual animals are harmed in doing this movie, you know that, right? But like, still, it's not a pleasant thing to see on the screen. So I do feel like I need to put that out there, that like, yeah, Dan Murrell was right. You're gonna watch this, and some people, you know, like the person I was with, they're really sensitive to this kind of stuff. They had to close their eyes and plug their ears because they don't want to see all this happen to animals, even fictional ones, you know. So like, anyways, that happens. That's in this movie. I feel like that's a warning you gotta have. Like, if you're gonna go watch the movie, which it is a good movie, you gotta go in knowing like, hey, stuff happens to these animals, and it's not good. It's not good. On top of that, though, there is a lot of like other you know, human body horror. You know, major spoilers for the end here, but when we see the High Evolutionary where his face is all stretched back and it looks really weird in the trailers, turns out that's a mask because Rocket years earlier had clawed his face off, and they show it. They show the mask being taken off, and they show, you know, what very little remains of his face, and it is, you know, again, it's like, this is a Disney released this thing. Oh my god. Because yeah, that's I mean, he's the bad guy, so you don't feel bad for him at all, because obviously everything else that he did, but still, it was like, geez. And it's not on screen for like just a second, like he's sitting there talking to them while his face is literally off, and it's, yeah, it's like that. So, you know, my point is, this movie shows some things and they don't hold back, and yeah, there's that. Anyways, let's get into the actual movie. So first off, this movie had a whole lot of stuff to juggle. You know, it had setups from Guardians 2, where it was like the after credit scenes mostly, where it's like, all right, we're hinting at Adam Warlock being created by the Sovereign. Ooh, that's gonna be a thing. And then they also hinted at Sylvester Stallone's group of their Ravengers, right? Like, they're gonna all be a group together, and they're all getting back together, and that's something really cool, right? And then we didn't see any of that for like a while until this movie. But then, in between all that, you also had Infinity War and Endgame, where you had Gamora get killed off, and then a different Gamora from 2014 timeline brought back, where she does not have the memories, and she doesn't have all the experiences and the feelings for Quill, and, you know, that's a big thing in this movie. So all I can say is that because of the amount of stuff that this movie was trying to juggle, and it did manage to tie it all together, I'm very thankful that we did not have to deal with the Thor stuff on top of all that. Because remember, Endgame ended with Thor leaving with the Guardians, and luckily Thor Love and Thunder, you know, however you feel about that movie, it did take care of that. You know, it separated Thor from the rest of the Guardians, and they went on their way to go do their own stuff. And it's like, okay, we don't have to deal with that in this movie now, because that's taken care of, because there's so much going on here. We have Guardians back, we have Rocket Raccoon's backstory, which, like I said, it's tragic and it's horrible to look at. We have Gamora, who Quill is still like really sad over. If you've seen the holiday special, you kind of get a hint towards this, how he's like real broken up about like Gamora's gone, and the Gamora that's here wants nothing to do with me. And they play on that throughout the entire movie. And then you also have the Sovereign coming back, and they've created Adam Warlock, and now he's like this entity that keeps on popping up over and over and over again. We'll talk about Adam. And then on top of that, you have Sylvester Stallone's group, right? So you're like, how did they tie all these elements together? Well, they kind of just started combining things for convenience sake, I think, but it works. You know, they have Gamora from 2014 is now with Sylvester Stallone's group, and so that way when she's here operating with our Guardians, it's also like, oh, but she's, you know, she's our link to that plot line, because she does go back to that group at the end. Speaking of which, they do this whole back and forth of like, well, Quill is still missing Gamora, but this isn't her Gamora, and she's like, she doesn't want to have to become you know, somebody who she's not. You know, she didn't have those experiences just so Quill feels good again, right? And I'm glad they didn't do that. They didn't force her to be with Quill when it doesn't really make sense for this version of Gamora, because again, she didn't go through all of those things like the other one did. So she does go back to Sylvester Stallone's group, and now they're like a family on their own, and I'm sure they'll all come back. But like, that was very much the most background element, was Sylvester Stallone was there at the beginning, and then he was kind of there at the very end, you know. So there's that. And then you have and this was really interesting, you have the Sovereign creating Adam Warlock, and these were supposed to be the golden people who were like, oh, we've perfected our society and we're all perfect. Turns out that they are also a creation of the High Evolutionary, because this guy has been creating, you know, in his attempt to create a perfect utopian society, a perfect people, he keeps on creating and creating and creating. And they talk about how there are entire corners of the galaxy who consider him a god because he created their people, you know, like he just, I guess he just creates several hundred, you know, people at a time, and then he just puts them off on a planet. I don't know where he's getting these planets from, because he had an animal planet called what was it called, Other Earth, Alternative Earth, whatever they called it, and it was filled with animal people like you saw in the trailer. They destroy that planet, by the way. All those animal people die. So again, this movie doesn't hold back. Like, people are dying in this thing everywhere. But yeah, so it turns out he created the Sovereign. So they found a way to like tie that loose thread from number 2 into this one by like saying like, oh, it's all tied together. Speaking of Adam Warlock and the Sovereign, so here is the thing that I think you really could have probably just cut this out of the movie and it wouldn't have changed much at all. You know, like, Adam Warlock shows up, you know, once every like 20 minutes or so, or even 30 minutes, and it's only for like a couple minutes. He shows up, he crashes into something, or he fights somebody, and then, you know, he gets dispatched by either, oh, he fainted because he just went through an explosion, or they managed to escape from him or something, right? And it happens like 3 or 4 times in this entire movie, and that's really all he is. You know, he's not really involved in the major beats of the plot. Like, he's after them and to bring them to the High Evolutionary, but the group is already going to where the High Evolutionary knows where to get them. So he's really kind of an afterthought in this movie. And, you know, by the end of it, he is part of the crew. You know, of course, they do the thing where, like, oh, he kind of learns to be a good guy and he saves Peter's life at the end, and now he's a member of the Guardians, or the New Guardians, or whatever you want to call them. So there is that, you know, like, this really just felt like a setup reason for him to be on the team and a good guy. But plot-wise, he's very much just in the background. He's just a thing that pops up to, you know, destroy their ships that they're in, and then they have to find another way to do something. And then they get back to the main plot, and he's really much a distraction, you know. And I will say, they don't even go into the rest of the Sovereign. The High Priestess lady, who is his mom, I guess, she dies, you know, pretty suddenly, and then he's just kind of left to his own devices until he becomes a good guy, and then that's it, you know. So Adam Warlock, I think some people are going to be disappointed in him, also because he's a goofball. They make him a goofball. They explain like, oh, well, we opened the cocoon too early, so he's got like the mind of a child, right? And it's funny sometimes. I think other times I'm like, okay, I'm over the shtick. I don't know. It feels like we already have, and I get it. Like, this movie ends with them all separating, and so maybe we won't have them in the future. But for this movie, we have Drax and we have Peter. We already have like our goofballs who are like goofy in different ways. So to add in Adam Warlock as like another goofball who's like, he's kind of dumb, but he's really strong, and he doesn't know that he's working for an evil guy, really, you know. Anyways, I don't know. It feels like he was definitely one of the weaker elements, which is a little unfortunate because he's essentially a Superman, you know. So imagine if a DC movie happens and Superman's just there every couple minutes, but he's not really doing much of consequence. He's just smashing a thing and then they escape from him. So that's basically what happens here. But yeah, I think everything else really works, you know, like Rocket's whole origin story, and you know, Peter learning to kind of let go of, you know, his version of Gamora. She is gone, right? And just they do a lot of like, you know, they finally bring up Peter's grandpa. You know, there's a lot of closure here, which obviously that should be the case because James Gunn is leaving to go do DC stuff. So yeah, there's as much closure as you can get here. They free a bunch of kids, and now Drax has basically children again, which they, you know, they're bringing up stuff that feels like it was kind of forgotten about for a while. Like Peter had a grandpa, and then they just never brought that up, right? Like why hasn't he gone back to Earth? And you know, like he just still does have family there, and they do that finally. And then Drax had a family and he had a daughter, and that was like his whole motivation in the first movie. And they're finally bringing that back with like, oh, he has all these kids now that he can teach and help grow. Like he was meant to be a dad, right? Not a destroyer. Like that's what they say in the movie. So I'm like, okay, they're bringing it all back. It all makes sense. And yeah, just and then Rocket, of course, you know, main character here of this movie. He's very much, you know, he finds closure in a lot of things, especially, you know, again, tragic part as he's about to die, and then he sees like the heavenly spirits of his animal friends who died, and they all like, you know, they kind of teach him like, hey, it's okay, we're out here, we're flying, the sky is pretty just like we always thought it was, you know, because they spent their whole lives in cages. You know, horrible, tragic movie. Man, this movie's sad, guys. That's what I'm trying to get across. It's real sad. Like if you sit and think about the animal parts too long, you just get sad again. Anyways, but yeah, so Rocket basically just, you know, he stands up to this guy. He's like, you know, just because I was an experiment just to see what you could do, I can be more than that. And you know, he's the leader of the new Guardians. So what are we left with here at the end? We have Rocket Raccoon, Groot, who's now even bigger than he was, but you know, during the duration of the movie. In the after credits, he's like really big Groot. We have Adam Warlock, who's, you know, goofball Adam Warlock. You know, hopefully, I mean, I guess they're not going to suddenly do like a character change where he's all serious now, but yeah, I guess he's just goofball. This is what we get. Let's see. We do. Oh, of course we have. Oh man, what is his name? It's Sean Gunn's character. Kraglin. That's his name. Kraglin. You know, he goes through his own little arc where he's still practicing that arrow. He's been doing it since the end of number 2. Still practicing how to use the arrow, and of course he does get his big hero moment where he takes out a whole bunch of guys with the arrow. But yeah, just overall, you know, we got a new Guardian group, and a lot of our Guardians, you know, they're kind of semi-retiring, or at the very least they're gonna go find themselves. Mantis is gonna go find out like who she actually is on her own when she's not like serving at the whims of other people, and you know, just all that kind of stuff. Oh, and Cosmo the dog. You know, obviously you have to have seen the holiday special again. Cosmo, psychic powered dog who can speak Russian through this talking collar. Really great character. You know, they could definitely have her stick around. That was great. But yeah, I will say maybe the action at parts, like when we get to, you know, the 5th time that a bunch of spaceships are following each other around and smashing into stuff, and I'm kind of like, hold on, what do the bad guys' spaceships look like versus the spaceships that we're supposed to be rooting for? I don't, you know, like there's a certain point where like there is so much different action and so many different plot points happening that like I feel like a second viewing would definitely help. But yeah, overall I did really enjoy it. it gets real dark. You know, I feel like I can't say that enough. It gets very dark in places. Maybe brace yourself a little bit for that. But overall, like, it's got a lot of heart. It's got a lot of, like, you know, this was obviously made with care and with love and with a full understanding of who these characters are and what they need and what they, you know, what would be like a logical conclusion point for them. And just, you know, they hit all of those moments really well. I do feel like it's kind of bloated. There's, you know, you feel that runtime at a certain point. There's elements like maybe Adam Warlock maybe didn't need to be in this movie, you know. Like, that feels more like a tacked on thing that maybe they felt they had to do because they teased it and no one ever did anything with it, so I guess they have to do it now. But yeah, overall I had a really good time. The humor works, and it's not as persistent as other times. This is very much a more somber, serious Guardians with, you know, occasional humor sprinkled in, but it's definitely not I would not say this is a comedy movie, you know. Like, obviously there's like whole segments of comedy, but it's definitely like this is a how would you put it, this is like a coming to terms with I don't know, life with yourself kind of movie. I don't know how else you would describe this, but it's yeah, it was good. They did a good job. I definitely enjoyed it more than, you know, Quantumania or, you know, some of the more recent entries in Marvel. So yeah, it didn't have anything to do with like the bigger picture of Marvel, but I think that was definitely for the best. They have so much going on. They had so much to wrap up. They did it. You know what I mean? And for right now, especially in the place where Marvel's at, with everything that's going on with the King and the Quantumania and all of it, I'll definitely take this. I'll definitely take the entry that is self-contained and it's fully realized and it's fulfilled, and maybe it's a little bloated, but it knows what it's got to do for all of its characters, and they did it. So yeah, good job, Guardians 3. You did it. Now, am I gonna sit here and put it on my rewatch list on its own? Maybe. I might fast forward through some of the parts where it's like, I'll be real, I don't need to see these animals die again. You know what I mean? Like it's just there to make you real sad, and it's like, all right, I get it. All his friends all died, and they already had crappy lives, and now they're dead, and it's like, I'm trying to, I don't know. You know, it's like I'm trying to enjoy a movie, and now I'm just, now I just kind of feel bad. You know, and I get that was the point, but still, it's like, oh man, I might fast forward through that next time. Anyways, go ahead and go watch Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know how you feel about certain parts of the movie that might have been difficult to watch for some people more than others. I don't know. Yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.